It's officially official visit season, and Penn State football has one of its main targets on campus this weekend. He's a must-have. He's a wide receiver, but can Penn State get him?
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver. Stop us if you've heard this one, because Penn State needs wide receivers, and this is a good official visit weekend to possibly land a commitment. This is Locked On Nittany Lions. I'm your host, Zach Seyko, and thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch. Every single day we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Brian Smith is back. He is the Locked On Podcast Network recruiting analyst specialist, also does Locked On Seminoles and covers Miami Hurricanes and Auburn Tigers as well. This is a recruiting episode, so today's episode is brought to you by the leaders in job recruiting, LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Brian, we'll start with the wide receivers. Some other intriguing prospects that are visiting May 31st this weekend, May 31st over the weekend, and then just how Penn State's going to pitch. What is the approach to get some of these recruits that, you know, not all of them are in state. These are some long shot commitments here, but Penn State usually makes a good first impression, but they need to be able to secure that commitment. Quincy Porter's the big name here. Okay. At the top of Penn State's big board for the longest time, it's always been Quincy Porter. He's the top player out of the state of New Jersey, is a consensus top 10 wide receiver. Brian, do they have, we've mentioned him already on the show before, do they have any chance of landing him? He's actually going to be on campus, so this isn't like a Jeremiah Smith situation where it was back and forth. Quincy Porter is visiting. Can they get him?
If he visits, the answer is yes. New Jersey is probably the most important state to Penn State because you're going to get a lot of in-state kids anyway, but that's the one right next to him. And that state is just random with where kids go. And when they don't land a lot of them, they go to Michigan, they go to Ohio State, they go to schools that they got to play against. And those are two schools we talked about before the show that Porter's involved with. You need receivers, and you really don't want to play against it. So he's going to visit those schools, but here's your shot to knock it out. Playing time's available. He fits the role that they need. They need a big-bodied guy that can go down the field. This is their white whale, man. Penn State needs to get Mr. Porter.
I think this is absolutely a must-have here. Porter is a difference maker. He's a game changer. He is somebody where defenses they have to account for him. They have to scheme for him. It's not like, oh, he's just a part of the offense. No, he can be the offense on any given Saturday. That's his potential. And of course, Penn State is going up against very stiff competition. He announced his top 6. If you want to look to the Big Ten, the main competitors there are Michigan and Ohio State. It seems everybody I ask, including yourself, you know, if you had to make a prediction today, who you ultimately think he lands with, and everybody tells me it's Ohio State.
I don't bet against Ohio State when they go after a receiver. Sue me. I mean, the track record is just insane. Why would I? The only thing they have working against them in this class is that they have so many good receivers. Playing time is not really available right away.
Yeah.
It's not. So other than that, their track record of getting guys to the NFL is good. They throw the ball around. They got Chip Kelly as their offensive coordinator now. There's a lot to like there. If they don't get him, it's not shocking, but I'm not betting against Ohio State.
I mean, Quincy Porter, again, is an absolutely must get for Penn State. That's the pitch. That you can be a number one wide receiver immediately. You can be the focal point in the offense. Penn State just doesn't have the recent track record there. Why do they keep getting the running back targets? Oh, because Saquon Barkley, Miles Sanders, Journey Brown, right? This long list of running backs that continue to have successful collegiate careers. But after Trace McSorley and then after Jahan Dotson, just the recent memory, no quarterback wide receiver has exactly wowed and been one of the best wide receivers or playmakers in the entire country. Sean Clifford was good. Parker Washington was good, but I'm talking great, elite. Can you develop into an All-American if you come in as a wide receiver? Drew Aller's got to prove the doubters wrong here. I think he can. I think he has all the potential in the world, but that's a matter of if It needs to be, can he do it? All right. We can speculate all the time, but this applies to wide receiver as well here.
Look, if you're going to look at the receiver situation and what they're selling, you can be the guy that turns the corner. You can be the guy that changes the narrative. There's a million ways you can say it, but the thing that Penn State fans probably need to remember is they just brought in a new coach. They're going to have to sell that coach too. Receiver and quarterback are connected. Penn State's recruited quarterback pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's just a matter of getting that comfort level. Michigan's not exactly going to throw it everywhere. Ohio State is loaded at receiver. I mean, it's not like Penn State is going up against an insurmountable odds kind of scenario. And it's a great place to go to school by all accounts. I've never been there, but it's like it's a cool place. It's got a unique setting.
Yeah.
I can't imagine it's that hard on an official visit to say you could be here and you'd have a really great college life.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it's as clear as it appears to be. Don't make it more complex. If you're Penn State, just sell who you are. And you know what? If he doesn't come at that point, it is what it is.
Well, there's other wide receivers, at least on this first official visit. Andrew Marsh is a high-end 4-star, currently out of the state of Texas. So you imagine that Oklahoma and Texas are going to be the leading contenders for him there. I'm going to put more stock and interest into Quincy Porter because he seems more of a legitimate candidate. But first weekend of official visits, and Andrew Marsh and Quincy Porter are both on campus. That's at least a step in the right direction for Penn State's recruiting. But then there's Lex Cyrus. And we want to talk about realistic here. Above all else, which player can you get a commitment out of? Well, Penn State and Lex Cyrus have been connected for quite some time now. Of course, he is an in-state prospect, and he's different compared to these wide receivers. He's more of your speedster type. Stretch the defense, stretch the field, and win with the over-top passing game. He's from the Harrisburg area, goes to Susquehanna Township. Lex Cyrus at 5'10", 175 pounds, he's currently listed at. I look to this one and say Penn State could actually get a verbal commitment here from Cyrus if everything goes well this weekend.
It's not out of the question. He's been to Penn State several times. He's a kid they've targeted. And I think that he likes it based on how many times he's been there, proximity and everything. Yes. Probably thinks he can play early. At least I would assume he does, based on what's happened at Penn State. If you don't get this one, would it make you feel a little nervous, Zach?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I kind of think that's how I would look at it. Like, there's the kid that you got to make the come from behind pitch to, and that's Porter. Okay. Mm-hmm. But you also need to secure the home base. When you lose these star in-state guys at a position of critical need, that's like salt thrown into the wound. I don't know if Penn State has a team they're most worried about with him. But again, if you're not going to win the Harrisburg kid, he's like an hour away, 2 hours away. Yeah. That's not going to end well for your program.
Right. This is Penn State working with essentially a 4 or 5 touchdown lead going into the fourth quarter. They are that high of a favorite. Rivals has put in a projection for him. They fully anticipate that Lex Cyrus will end up at Penn State. It's only, I do find it a little questionable why it's taken this long for him to make a verbal commitment. Maybe he wants to do his due diligence. Other interested schools, South Carolina, Maryland, Rutgers are the ones that immediately show up when you look at Lex Cyrus's profile here. But he's a consensus top 15, top 10 recruit in the state of Pennsylvania, a top 30 wide receiver, if you will. So, but he's still a 4-star. He's still a 4-star wide receiver. Penn State's had, other wide receivers that flew under. Jahan Dotson, once upon a time, was a former 3-star. So look what can happen. Ratings don't matter at the end of the day. Can you get quality talent and someone that is willing to develop by any means necessary? And I think that's right here the case with Lex Cyrus. He projects as your slot receiver if you are able to land him in this class, but nothing's a guarantee, even though Penn State is the favorite.
That's why you got to take care of your base, man. You get one out of the way now, then all those other guys that aren't as likely, you can concentrate your efforts there, and you can have him kind of help recruit him too. So Penn State needs Cyrus, and to be honest, it would be really nice if he did it sometime in the next week.
One of the best linebackers in this class of 2025 is up for official visits. One of the best cornerbacks, 2 of the best cornerbacks in the class of 2025 are visiting Penn State this upcoming weekend. They all happen to be from the Florida area in that case. So Brian, since you are the expert when it comes to the southern states, we are going to talk about some of those other prospects visiting Penn State this weekend and if Penn State has a legitimate shot at getting any other commitments. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. You got to download the Gametime app because buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. The NBA playoffs are coming down to the wire as the finals are quickly approaching and everybody's hyped. Picture yourself at one of those live games, conference finals, the finals themselves. Gametime can make it happen, turn those dreams into reality as the NBA's authorized ticket marketplace. And get this, prices actually drop on Gametime as it gets closer to tip off. Anytime you browse the app, you can see the playoff matchups. You can grab some pretty sweet deals from last minute tickets to other features like the panoramic seat view. So you're not second guessing yourself. You're not wondering what it's going to be like to sit in these seats. You know exactly with the Gametime app. So Gametime's got it all, plus the lowest price guarantee. So last minute ticket deals, flash deals. You can even get zone deals on the Gametime app. Solid ticket coverage gives you peace of mind with each and every purchase through Gametime. So are you ready to snag those playoff tickets? Download the Gametime app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So currently at this moment in time, before May 31st, the weekend arrives. Again, this episode is going up on a Thursday. Penn State could hypothetically add some more official visits, but at this time, there are 13 players officially visiting for their official visits this weekend. They could hypothetically add more, but there is really good talent. We've talked about Ty Jackson on this show, Brian. We've talked about, but we need to talk more about guys like Graceson Littleton, Antonio Branch, quality 4 stars, all from the state of Florida. And depending on who you ask, Ty Jackson is the best linebacker in this class. And Penn State already has 3 commits at this position. So we talk about Ohio State's roster being crowded at wide receiver. What do you think? How do you think Ty Jackson approaches that when he comes for the first weekend of official visits? And it's like, hey, Penn State already has 3 linebacker commitments in this class. Where do I fit in?
I highly doubt he cares. He's a South Florida kid. You can't explain the level of confidence South Florida kids have, especially against kids from the North. They will not have any fear. None. So he won't care. That's my strong guess. If he wants to go to Penn State, he'll commit to Penn State. End story.
And I would agree. If you watch the film, you watch the tape, I've seen some of his highlights there. Easily a top 5 linebacker overall in the entire nation. I would argue that he could end up finishing as the number 1 or number 2 linebacker in this entire class. And Penn State still holds the reins as linebacker U. Tom Allen is a linebacker's guy. You've seen what I know Abdul Carter's moving to defensive end, but you've seen Micah Parsons, Abdul Carter. Like, there's been no drop off. Obviously, Micah Parsons, we've seen what he's done, and people would probably say that, yes, at the end of the day, Parsons was a better collegiate linebacker than Carter, but they both had instant impact. Ty Jackson could be the next one in that long list, maybe even contend for that number 11 jersey.
I think he's a traditional will linebacker long term, and he's just such a good player in space. Mm-hmm. He fits today's game, screen game, outside zone play. You can chase it down from the backside. Yeah. Penn State fans would love watching him. He's a heck of a lot of fun to watch at the high school level.
Let's talk about Graceson Littleton. Littleton from Tampa, Florida. He's a high-end 4-star. He's a top 15 cornerback, and Penn State needs defensive backs. You look at the class of 2025, and Penn State has Xavier Thomas, who probably projects as that slot defensive back. But if you can't beat Ohio State when it comes to wide receiver recruiting, how do you counteract that? You go get the defensive backs to try and challenge those wide receivers. I know Ohio State holds the advantage, but you still put in the effort, still put in the work. In Penn State, time and time again, with Terry Smith, Anthony Poindexter always has one of the best, if not the best, secondary in the entire country. That's right. Penn State has a top 5 secondary year in and year out, and Graceson Littleton can be a part of that group in 2-3 years' time as he develops.
This list that he has kind of shows you his recruitment overall. Mm-hmm. He's got to visit Iowa. He's got to visit with Bama, Clemson, Penn State. He's been recruited for a long time. He's a kid we knew about in the Central Florida area. And he's just got the length that you're looking for. He can play bump. He can play press bail, whatever you need him to do. I've seen him play this spring. He's the kind of guy that fits today's game too. With that length, they want players that are long because you can't just play bump and run man coverage anymore with all these bunch formations and everything. So you got guys that are bigger that can tackle, do some different things. And Littleton's a physical player, so he could end up playing safety, corner. He could end up playing nickel. Really good football player.
Let's move to Antonio Branch. So we talk about size to go along with that ability. Well, if you look at that, if you look at what Branch is listed at, 6'2". So Penn State, I think, has an idea in mind, like, hey, we need somebody that, good size, a good blend of size and speed, but also somebody that can defend one of those bigger targets. And Branch at 6'2", going into his senior season, who's to say that he couldn't top out at 6'3", 6'4"? I know that's something, but that's a different type of projection here because you can't control, ultimately genetics. But Branch is another very good cornerback in his own right, being a 4-star, probably not to the same caliber at this point in time as a Littleton, but who's to say that he couldn't get better? What do you like about Branch, who hails from Miami?
I saw him as a sophomore, and he's another one of the kids that we knew about early. And he was just a long, tall, skinny kid, but he could really run. He was rangy. He could probably be a cover 3 corner, but I just like him in the back end of the defense long term. He sees a play and he jumps it. I'm not saying he can't play corner. Everybody's got their opinions on what they want, but that's just where I would play him. And he's a ball hawk. He sees the play and he attacks. Again, South Florida kid. Booker T's is tradition rich as it gets in South Florida. In the Miami Public League, they got a great coaching staff there. I think that's a kid that'll play pretty early in college. And again, he's his visit list kind of speaks to that. So great player.
Another player specifically I want to ask about, and we'll go through the list of all of them that's going to attend this weekend for official visits, but Malachi Goodman hails from the state of New Jersey. And the reason that this one is appropriate to talk about specifically with you, Brian, is that with your coverage of Auburn, it seems like Penn State and Auburn are two of his top choices here for this offensive lineman. 6'5", 315 pounds, high-end 4-star once again here, and visiting Penn State in the first slate of official visits. Penn State, I think, has a leg up here. I know that, maybe there's a trade at the end of the day, right? Goodman commits to Penn State and Alvin Henderson potentially flips to Auburn. I know that's a different type of hypothetical here, but Goodman is, especially with what Penn State needs to continue to do for upkeep at its tackle spot. I mean, I like Goodman as a prospect as well, simply because he moves well for somebody that is at that size.
I think he could play right tackle, but everybody's got their own opinion on scheme and all that kind of stuff. But if you look at his list, Auburn, Georgia, and Alabama are on it for an offensive lineman in New Jersey. What's that tell you?
It tells me everything.
I mean, those schools don't have to go very far for linemen. This area is just completely loaded. So him visiting, he came down on the 17th to visit Auburn, had a great visit. They think they're in the mix. I know that, but it's a long way to go. And his visit list is ridiculous. You got Georgia, Bama, and SC on it. Come on. He's one of those guys that could go anywhere. Penn State's in there as well, but I think this one will play out towards the end of summer. It's going to be a little while because he's got a really impressive offer list.
Coming up in the final segment, we'll go over that full list briefly, all 13 prospects, the other few names that do stand out here, and if Penn State has a good standing with them to potentially land a commitment, and ultimately what the pitch is, because a year ago at this time, Brian, we talked about how Penn State makes a good first impression, but then doesn't secure the commitment for some of these other prospects that are out of the area. What can they do this time around? We'll discuss that coming up next. And since this is a recruiting episode, let's talk about the leaders in job recruiting, LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has all the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you cannot find anywhere else, even the ones that aren't actively searching for a new job, but might in fact be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn understands that small businesses are wearing tons of hats. Might not have the time to devote to hiring. That's why LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier, quicker, and more intuitive. 2.5 million small businesses. That is right. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So be one of them. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So here is the full list of all 13 attendees for this weekend's official visit for starting on May 31st, Friday. Quincy Porter, who we've talked about, Andrew Marsh, Ty Jackson, Graceson Littleton, wide receiver, linebacker, defensive back. Then defensive end, Cedric Works, linebacker, Max Granville, athlete, Brandon Finney, wide receiver, Lex Cyrus, offensive tackle, Malachi Goodman, wide receiver, Corey Sims, cornerback Antonio Branch, defensive back, defensive lineman Yvonne Kamajau, and safety Aiden Manutai, who hails all the way from Hawaii. How about that one for the first weekend of official visits? Someone all the way in the state of Hawaii. So as we go through this final segment, Brian, this is just kind of a general overview. Penn State is a top 20 class for the 2025 cycle currently, depending on where you look at it. Seems like they're hovering around, top 15, but firmly inside the top 20. Penn State definitely has some needs here as they don't have any defensive linemen. They only have the one defensive back commit. They only have the one wide receiver commit in Lyric Samuel. We've already talked about Xavier Thomas on this podcast. So when you hear this list of names, are there any other ones that stand out to you, Brian?
This is to be really honest, a tremendous list of football players. But
it is.
And trying to go through it and pick like one or two guys is hard. But I always talk to you about finding D linemen and corners. So Cedric Works is a kid I'm interested in.
Okay.
Pass rusher from Ohio. Edge guys you can never have enough of. And to my knowledge, Ohio State is not coveting him, which whatever.
Okay.
But that's a good football player. If you're Penn State, that's somebody you should want. He's probably a top 100, top 150 kid. So if you can get that guy, that would be a really nice ad.
Yeah, Cedric Works. If you take a look at his profile, I mean, he's come on strong as of late. So this is somebody that has risen through the recruiting rankings and at least garnered more attention at this portion of the cycle. Seems to be a top 20 edge rusher. He's a top 10 player in the entire state of Ohio. Again, depending on whatever recruiting site you're looking at, all of them do great work on 24/7. Rivals, ESPN's kind of the odd one out there, but it seems like that they all agree that Cedric Works is somebody to have for your program, and Penn State seems to be the leading school here out of the state of Ohio. It seems like you said, Ohio State is neglecting him in this case. I want to give a shout out to Brandon Finney because this is another prospect. Penn State and already has a strong relationship with McDonough High School out of the state of Maryland, and the long list of players that they've gotten from just recently, right? Curtis Jacobs, Devon Ellies, Denai Dennis Sutton, Joseph Mapoye, all these guys that have gone to the Maryland high school, and Penn State just continues to be a pipeline. Or I should say McDonough continues to be a pipeline to Penn State. So who's to say here that Brandon Finney can't immediately be that next prospect to commit from McDonough High School? I like what he offers as a versatile player. He's versatile. He could end up playing wide receiver. He could end up playing defensive back. You can play him anywhere, cornerback, safety, wide receiver. He's 6'2", currently under 200 pounds. But I think this is someone that Penn State should definitely be in the running for. And ultimately, I would be confident that they should. I would lean that he's going to commit to them. But I am confident at the end of the day that Finney would end up at Penn State.
Anytime you can get 6'2" corners or guys that can at least be your free safety at that size, and it's from a program like that's a really good school, and it's fairly close. You got a history with it. That's as close to an in-state player that's not in-state as you're going to get. You need to get those guys. So, and no offense to Maryland, but it's Maryland. You shouldn't lose many battles against them. They're not very good. So that's an important battle for Penn State to win.
Well, he's going to be out of the state of Maryland regardless, because the top three schools that have his attention, Penn State, South Carolina, and Oregon. Welcome to the Big Ten, Oregon. So Finney is really fast and really quick. That's why a lot of schools at the end of the day are going to like him. So somebody that's 6'2" and runs as well as he does, schools like Oregon are going to be involved in his recruitment.
Absolutely. And that's kind of what we've seen here lately. Oregon's in on just random kids all over the country. Yeah. There's a kid I just scouted the other day from Birmingham, getting ready to visit Oregon before I saw him. So that's just kind of the norm, man. Welcome to the Big Ten. Like you said, I think that'll probably help their recruiting a little bit, but Penn State still needs to focus on where they're hitting. They're doing a great job in their local area, and Finney's another one.
Brian, I know that every pitch, every selling point is unique and individualized for the player, the prospect. Okay. You can't recruit an offensive lineman the same way that you do a wide receiver, a kicker, or a punter, right? Everybody. And then, respective to what state they're at, what state they're located in, what high school, what coaching staff they've been working with, their playing background, what they know. Okay. But at the end of the day, Penn State, when we had these conversations a year ago to this point, official visit season was upon us. Penn State was a leading contender for Jamonte Waller, leading for Jameer Grimsley, right? Leading for Benedict Ume, leading for Nick Marsh. And then all of a sudden, one by one, those players who were out of state they didn't seem like they were long shot commitments, but at the end of the day, they ultimately became that. So from Penn State's point of view, I don't know that I want fans to get as amped up this time around. It's like, hey, they have Quincy Porter on campus. Hey, they have Brandon Finney on campus. Hey, they have so-and-so on campus, and he's a high-profile player, and Penn State's in good standing with them, and at the end of the day, they ultimately go somewhere else. So what is Penn State's pitch to push past that? What would you recommend?
I think more than anything else is, you got to recruit the way you have to this point because they get kids on campus. They do a good job. Yeah. But they got to come up with something to make these kids feel like they're the reason they're going to get over the top. And that may be cliche, but like Penn State's a top 12 program conservatively, maybe top 8, but they don't win the big games. And I know Penn State fans are tired of talking about it and hearing about it, but that's what I think is hurting them with the elite recruits. So somehow you got to get those kids to think they're going to be the reason they get over the top. So whatever that is, however you do it, that's my answer.
That is Brian Smith over on the other side, the recruiting expert for the Locked On Podcast Network. You can follow him on X and check out his work when it comes to the Florida State Seminoles, Auburn Tigers, Miami of Florida, and so much more, and get a comprehensive look at the entire national recruiting landscape as well with his work. Brian, thanks so much for the time as always. We're going to do this again in just a week's time because we got multiple weekends. We got a month straight of official visits. So 1 down, 3 more to go after this, and the lists actually get better and better. So we thought this list was good. Just wait in a week, 2 weeks time. We got some bigger and better names as well to talk about. So can't wait to do just that.
It's going to be a lot of fun. The month of June is loaded with recruiting.
And once again, thanks so much for checking out this episode of Locked On Nittany Lions. Be a part of the discussion. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. Which recruits you would like to see Penn State land a commitment from, where Penn State's class of 2025 stands. Let me know your thoughts down below. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a like on the show, share it with friends and family. And if you're not already, become an everydayer, subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts for the latest conversations around your favorite Penn State sports teams. And don't forget, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering each and every league. You can find Locked On Sports Today now available on YouTube and on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app.